Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sheila Paracha, and I'm the director of the Energia International Network on Gender Sustainable Energy. As the moderator of today's event, I extend a warm welcome to all of you to discuss this important topic, energizing equality, harnessing women's power and skills for climate action and sustainable energy. This event is co-hosted by the LDC Group on Climate Change, the conveners of the Gender and Energy Compact, UNIDO, Energia and GWNet, SE for All, OSCE, and Lean Equity. Our discussion this morning is going to delve into the pivotal role of women in the climate and sustainable energy workforce. Addressing gender disparities in this sector, particularly with regards to STEM and leadership, the event highlights climate action and sustainable transition as catalysts to advance diversity, inclusion, and gender equality. However, in this landscape of possibilities, challenges do persist, and efforts are needed to attract, retain, and promote diverse talents, bridge skill gaps, and advance SDG 7 on energy, SDG 5 on gender, and SDG 13 on climate. You're most welcome. Based on this context, our distinguished speakers will deliberate on strategies to enhance women's effective participation in the climate and energy sector, the relevance of gender disaggregated data, discuss the unique needs of women in least developed countries, and share best practices for creating inclusive workplaces. So without further ado, I'm now honored to welcome Rana Konim, Chief of the Energy Systems and Industrial Decarbonization Unit at UNIDO. Rana, I hope I said your last name correct. You're most welcome.
Thanks a lot, Sheila. I realize I need to get a bit higher for this. Well, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us here today. It's absolutely my pleasure to be in this side event, a topic that's very close to my heart. Actually, so in addition to my role, I'm leading the development and coordination of all the work here for the Vienna Energy and Climate Forum. And I asked the team not to book me any speaking slot because I have like 5% brain capacity left. But when they told me about this event, I said, no, absolutely, I want to be part of it because, you know, it's actually, from the title, very energizing to be among, you know, supporters, you know, be it our male supporters here or also all the great women leaders that are gathered with us here, and Sheila and Irene and Ute and others, they're all amazing role models. So from my perspective, I think one thing we try to also highlight within the forum is to integrate the gender discussion into the plenaries. So it's not only a quantitative issue of having gender parity, which we strived for throughout all the panels and side events and all that, but at the same time to make sure that there is a qualitative discussion happening around the role of women as well. And here we are tackling two very important topics, skills and also data. We know that although in the renewable sector, you know, there tends to be more representation of women, at the same time, we're really not there yet in terms of getting to 50% or representation. And you see here, you know, there are a few things I stand for. Equality, 30 by 30 from the SEM, the SDG 7 goals. So these are things that are always anchored here, and I'd love to see that we are able to actually move on that. But to move on that, you know, there are a couple of things we still need to work on, and this is where our work with the Gender Energy Compact and with our partners from Energia and GWNet comes in, because what we're saying is we can't manage this transformation to bring more women into the energy sector without the right policies that support us in getting through with our careers and advancing in our careers. We can't do it in the entrepreneurship side as long as there is no financing that is available as well for women. We can't do it if there's not really training and development for leadership and advancement in our career paths. And so it's really a very timely discussion here to look at what GWNet and others have done in terms of research on the skills and the data. And I really hope that you also contribute to this discussion and share your insights. Thank you so much for joining us again. And yeah, I'll pass over again to you, Sheila.
Thank you. Rana, thank you very much for your remarks, and I'd like to acknowledge UNIDO's role as being the official host of the Gender and Energy Compact. It sends a very strong message that an intergovernmental organization that works at the intersectionality of sustainable energy, of climate, and of industrial development is hosting the compact. So we thank you for your leadership there. I'm now pleased to welcome Ms. Rosemary Idem, Manager of the Women and Youth at the Forefront Program at ESSI for All, to give her opening remarks.
Thank you, Sheila, for that kind introduction. Actually here representing the CEO and SRSG who couldn't make it, unfortunately, so permit me to give her remarks on her behalf. So, distinguished colleagues, invited guests and friends, I would like to welcome you all to this event that looks at how to harness the power and skills of women to achieve an equitable energy workforce as a first step in achieving a just energy transition. Gender diversity in the workforce drives innovation, opens new pathways for technology deployment, brings more valuable perspective to social and economic development, and provides a richer pool of talent and for emerging industries such as climate and energy technologies. However, the energy sector is characterized by a severe underrepresentation of women at all levels. So the global energy industry right now employs almost 30 million people, with women only representing 32%. But where we see a major challenge is in the leadership positions, where less than 35% of women are in boardrooms and directors globally. So, ladies and gentlemen, the global energy transition provides a unique opportunity to promote diversity, reach inclusion goals, and achieve equality in the energy sector. It's expected that about 42 million jobs will be created by 2050 in the renewable energy sector alone. So we therefore need to ensure that we create spaces for women to not just enter the workforce, but to also advance in their careers. At ESSI for All, we put gender equality in the heart of our work in SDG 7 by enhancing women's full participation in the sustainable energy solution space at every level. Through our Women at the Forefront program, which I'm proud to lead, we are expanding professional opportunities for women in the energy workforce while supporting and championing the future energy leaders. We do this by providing mentorship, technical trainings, sponsorships to events like this to help women advance their careers and skills and prepare them for leadership roles in the future. So for us to see transformative change in the sector, the policies we develop, the energy transition plans we design, and the financing we deploy must be backed by the right information and data. However, gaps in gender disaggregated data in the energy sector makes it very difficult to set targets and measure progress, especially in developing and least developed countries. So we must therefore come together to improve systematic data collection in order to better understand the trends and identify key actions to increase diversity, inclusivity in the energy sector. By implementing gender-responsive policies, providing targeted support, and fostering inclusive partnerships, we can be able to harness the full potential of women in driving a sustainable energy workforce. I would like to therefore urge all here to push for greater action at all levels, from global platforms to subnational fora. It will help us create the enabling conditions that will attract and retain a diverse workforce to ensure a clean, just, and inclusive energy transition. I also want to take this opportunity to also thank our partners, including the LDC Group for Climate Change, OSCE, Lean Inequity, and of course the Gender Energy Compact champions, which are UNIDO, Energia, and GWNet. for organizing this event. So I wish you all a successful event, and I look forward to the recommendations that we can take forward. Thank you.
Rosemary, thank you very much for setting the tone of our discussion and also for your call for action. I'm now pleased to invite two scene-setting keynote addresses. The first is going to be from Ms. Stella Funzani Gama, Director of Forestry at Malawi's Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change. Ms. Stella's, in her capacity as UNFCCC negotiator for Malawi and LDC Group on Climate Change, she will discuss the challenges and the needs of women from least developed countries and share lessons from the mentorship program for women climate negotiators. Madam Stella, the floor is yours.
Greetings to you all. My name is Stella Gama. I work with the Department of Forestry in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change in Malawi, but I'm also a negotiator with the Least Developed Countries Group at the UNFCCC. I support the group on gender and climate change, but also on technology development and transfer. So under the gender work with the least developed countries, we are working on a study to understand the causes of low representation of female negotiators in the UNFCCC process. So it is teamwork. I'm just representing the team. So at the UNFCCC, we have said the climate policies and actions should be responsive to gender power structures, social constructs, and they should also recognize and respond to the needs, perspectives, the rights of women and men, and also enhance and protect women's human rights. Despite seeing improvements over the years in the UNFCCC, we acknowledge that gender equality is a key issue. However, women's participation still remain lower than men in the UNFCCC process, and also the constituted bodies that are in existence. This low participation is even more conspicuous in members from the least developed countries. The Climate Convention started as a gender-blind convention when we started the talks in the 90s. However, in the UNFCCC 2001, that's when we had the first decision looking at the needs of women, and it talked about the representation and participation of women, that we should enhance the representation and participation of women in the UNFCCC processes. And then there was nothing that we talked about women and gender until in 2012 in Doha, where we said we need a specific gender, a standalone gender item on the COP agenda. Because before we did not have a gender and climate change agenda item, but now we have it since 2012. And in 2014, after 2012, there were a number of gender mandates in, especially in adaptation agenda items. So we said we need a comprehensive, coherent work on gender under the UNFCCC. So in 2014, parties led by the Least Developed Countries Group established a 2 years Lima work program on gender. And it is still in progress after it was reviewed and extended up to now. In 2016, that's when we extended the Lima Work Program on Gender. In 2017, then we also developed a gender action plan to go with the Lima Work Program on Gender. So now we have the Gender Action Plan and the Lima Work Program on Gender. Another review of these two instruments will happen next year. So the Lima Work Program on Gender and the Gender Action Plan look at three major issues: the goal of gender balance in the processes, constituted bodies and committees, gender responsive policies, and also the women participation and women empowerment in the UNFCCC process. But however, if we look at the timeline from 2001 to date 2023, the progress, especially on gender balance, is there. It is steady, or I would say slow, because we still don't see us reaching the 50-50 goal. Sometimes we get to 35, sometimes we get to 40, and sometimes we drop to 25%. But we would love to see 50% of women participating in decision-making, in delegations, and also in constituted bodies. So the study wants to understand why is it that we have underrepresentation in especially for the women in the UNFCCC process. So to understand the causes of gender imbalance, to identify good and promising practice for addressing gender balance, and how we can also increase the meaningful participation and representation, to ascertain the challenges and opportunities for increasing women's participation in the process, identify entry points in form of policies, practice, and plans at both national and international level to advance gender equality, and also to develop an advocacy process, message support, policy, practice, and programming to change the mindset of everyone, including the women themselves, that they need to participate in this process. There is nothing for women without them. So allow me to go to the preliminary findings of the study. The study is ongoing, but what is it that we have identified as the drivers behind the inadequate representation? They are many, and I believe by the end of the study, we will have more drivers, more challenges, and more issues being presented by the female delegates from least developed countries. So most respondents indicate that they are not adequately represented at the highest levels in negotiation process, and they state that this is because of the following. We have traditional and patriarchal norms and biases which exist in our countries, especially the least developed countries in Africa, in Asia, in the Caribbean. So that also influences our participation. So we need continuous capacity building, continuous empowerment, so that we change this mindset. Sometimes it's also because of lack of financing and funding to participate in activities like these, to attend the subsidiary body meetings or to attend the conference of the parties. And sometimes, most of the times, if you look at the statistics for the subsidiary body participation and the COP, most women will participate at the subsidiary bodies in June. That's the mid-year climate conference. Most men will attend the main decision-making conference of the parties. There's also limited involvement in leadership and decision-making roles. And this is where the women themselves need to be aggressive, change the mindset that sometimes it will be given to you on a silver platter. Make your entry into the spaces and the opportunities to lead and to make decisions in the process. Ineligibility due to maybe missing requisite skills. People feel that they have to be a diplomat, they have to have certain skills, and because of that, there are opportunities that you can get capacity building in those areas. Myself, I have been trained by, sometimes in Malawi, but also by UNITA. They still have online courses, and the Women in Development organization, WIDO, they provide, every year, they provide negotiator training sessions at the COP, where you can benefit from negotiation skills, diplomacy skills, as well as leadership skills. Others, it is people saying that maybe the climate conferences are not child-friendly, but this has improved. You can bring your babies to the climate conference. Visa and other travel logistics are still an issue. People fail to come to meetings as these because of visa issues. Sometimes it's also just because of inadequate awareness on opportunities. And because of these challenges, we have also created what we call a Women Leaders Network within the UNFCCC. The role is to provide social support to women in the process, but also to mentor the young ones who are coming into the process, who find the process overwhelming and challenging. But when they look up to leaders, we share our lessons on how we became negotiators, the challenges we faced. They are encouraged to go on with the process so that they can be retained in the system, because that's also another challenge. To bring in people can be easy, but to retain the female negotiators for a longer period, longer than 3 years, is also a challenge.
Can I ask you to wrap up in the next minute?
So, what is it that we can do? We need affirmative action, nominations from country parties, nominate women, provide travel funds for women, whether at national level or through international organizations such as the ones I have benefited from, Women Development, Women Delegates Fund, and maybe funds from the group of the least developed countries. Quotas and targets in the constituted bodies, we should be able to say that the Clean Development Mechanisms Board should have at least 40% women. Now, out of 20 people, there are 2 women in the Clean Development Mechanism Board. We should address structural discrimination issues. We should enhance and strengthen the mentorship programs that exist amongst the women leaders, those upcoming leaders, and also the female youth. Develop national gender action plans. We need a robust gender and climate change actions at national level, and that will bring in more gender responsiveness at global level. I have a lot to talk about, but time is not with us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Stella. Could you please tell us when the study will be ready? Assuming possibly early next year.
2024 March.
Okay, great. So we'll have a chance to read it then. And thank you very much for the recommendations which apply which for me I feel apply not just to the COP negotiations, but can be applied to many other intergovernmental intergovernmental processes. I'd now like to invite our second keynote address, which will be delivered by Ms. Christine Linz, Executive Director of GWNet, who will present new research findings that are hot off the press, Europe's energy transition, women's power in solving the labor bottleneck. Christine, the floor is yours. And let us be disruptive. I asked my panelists to sit. I see you cannot see the screen. If you would like to take a seat in front, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, my first disruption was already that I moved this microphone stand because I feel I need a bit more space to move around. Thanks a lot, Stella, for your insights in the climate space. I'm going to complement this now with some insights on the energy transition sector. A word about GWNet, the Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition, is a membership-based non-profit association headquartered here in Austria, which currently has over 4,000 members from 150 countries and works with numerous international organizations and women in energy networks, both on the regional and national level. One of our partners, Lean In, is here co-organizing this event today, and there are many others around here. So we are happy about this, and our work is, our focus is on empowering women in that space, in the energy space, through interdisciplinary networking, advocacy, training, and mentorship. We work a lot also on the data side, not in isolation, but in cooperation with many partners, particularly IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. Rosemary has quoted some of these figures, so there are currently about 12.7 million people employed in the renewable space globally, and this number is supposed to increase to 42 million by 2050. When you look at job creation projections for the EU in different sectors that you find here on the right-hand side of the slide, you see varying numbers depending on different studies leading up to 2025, 2030. And this already, I think, shows one of the challenges, mainly that many different organizations use different baselines, and so these data are not always very easy to compare. And I think also on the global level, all the data that we have, this is, I would say, a first evidence, and we should do more, and I think we should do more in a joint effort to really get a better data source. But it's very clear, if we don't have the data, it's very difficult to hold our political decision makers accountable for how the situation of women in that space also evolves. Again, work from IRENA that we contributed to, the share of women in energy is with, as you see, or in renewable energy, is with 32% higher than the share of women in oil and gas, where it's only 22%. We have different figures in the wind sector, where it's just 21%, solar PV 40%. But what is very clear, we are far away from the economy-wide average, and this is exactly where I would say the problem starts. Because I was about 2 weeks ago at a solar PV conference, very technically in Frankfurt, and I was speaking there at the session on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I was actually expecting that the room would be empty because it was all these solar PV asset managers, very technical in their optimization and financing, etc., etc. And no, it was the contrary. The room was packed, because the session was focusing on battling the labor shortage. And at least in Europe, and I think also to a certain extent in the US and in many OECD countries, we see that companies are actually struggling to find talent in that space. And so the need for attracting the women is becoming more and more important. And this I found very interesting because we see that not, of course, because of equity considerations, women have to be at the table. But I think this sector will only really thrive if it manages to attract the best talents of both women and men. And in that respect, we need to take action. Here is a slide from the study on women's participation in the EU workforce. Now, in general, and not specifically in the energy sector, but what we see, and I think this is a common trend in all parts when we talk about general jobs, including the administrative jobs, the share of women is, of course, higher. So you have here the overall labor force where we are nearly at 50%, as we have also seen before. But then when it moves down to the C-suite, we see that clearly the share of women, of course, in the executive and CEO share is really much lower, something I think also that you, Rosemary, have referred to initially. So there is need to take action. And yes, it's a human right to have access to employment on equal term with men, but we also have evidence that companies with diverse leadership, they really show better economic results. And I think this is the convincing factor. It just makes a lot of sense. And what I'm actually really pleased here in this room is that we initially were thinking that we only have a women-only audience, and this is really great. I see Kande, I see Daniel, I see many people, and we need you because you are really our champions, because we really believe that this equality issue is not something that should be tackled by the women alone. It's something that needs to be tackled by society as a whole, and we need you all in this fight. And where there's also evidence is that companies with diverse leadership have more stringent decarbonization policies. And I think there it starts really to get interesting, because that goes also in the direction which we want to go. Again, here, this is the study that Sheila has referred to, Europe's energy transition, women's power in solving the labor bottleneck. I would like to acknowledge my colleague Irene Ginner-Reichel, who was leading the work from GWSI on this. It's work that we did on behalf of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. And this study argues that there are strategies to address skill shortages because we need to attract more women to that sector and to that workforce. And then it provides recommendations for all different target groups, from policymakers to companies, to employment, to unions, and also to the education sector, because we need to tackle the issue on all different fronts. I think for the sake of time, to make your life easier, Sheila, I'm not going to go into all these recommendations in great detail. I think we'll be able to share the slides afterwards, or also you can download the study from our website. And I think we'll also, especially in the discussion that we're going to have afterwards, go back to some of these, so I don't want to be repetitive, and we can keep those. But I think everybody in this equation has a share and a role to play, and this is what we are trying to really sort out. And I think it's very important to do some foresight studies, because very often we also do not really know what the needs are, and so it's difficult to attract. We need mentoring, we need role models. It has been referred to. I was yesterday at this Women Changemaker session, and the importance of role models, of networks, was highlighted there also quite significantly, and I think all these things are important elements. And of course, everybody has a role to play when it comes to attracting women, to retaining them, and then to promoting them. And finally, also, of course, there is the need to ensure gender balance in promotional materials in STEM education and other technical vocational educational trainings. It starts very early on. I think it's not that these women will materialize from one day to the other, but we need to start very, very early on in the education sector to really focus on making this transition. The study also contains a couple of good practice examples. It does not, there are already several governments, organizations. I see here Jean-François Equality Initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial. There are lots of initiatives out there, and this provides some inspiration on how others are doing it. A great program outside the European Union, Energía Más Mujer, for example, from Chile, where the Chilean government has put a focus, an action plan on mainstreaming gender in energy. So they have a dedicated unit on mainstreaming gender in the energy sector in the Ministry of Energy, and that involves also the industrial players. So these examples are out there. There's also an initiative from the energy community in Southeast Europe working on gender disaggregated data. There is a need to do more. I mentioned there are some data already, but we still have a huge issue in comparing them all. So numerous good practices exist, but I think the focus of our work now needs to bring them to scale, replicate them, and really make sure that we move quickly in the direction towards gender equality, and attract young women, particularly to this really exciting and forward-looking sector. The sector being at the heart of the solution, and I think this is absolutely the great beauty of it. And for this, to achieve this, I think it's important that we all work together. And in that sense, I'm really grateful that we have this side event here today with all the partners, energy, and all the others, to debate these strategies. Thank you very much.
I think your seat has been taken, but thank you very much. They will be moving, don't worry. Thank you very much, Christine, for sharing that, for sharing the study. The roadmap that you presented is not just relevant for policy and practice in Europe, but there are key lessons for other regions that we can build on. And so it's really important to build this evidence for decision making. We'll now move into the reflection that we're going to have from our distinguished and esteemed panel of panelists of speakers, and I'd like to ask you to again take your seats on the podium. This is a topic, an event where we are going to be disruptive, so we can get our brain cells moving and really call for really have an intense discussion. So we have esteemed speakers here from government, from civil society, from intergovernmental organizations, and from the private sector. And aside from what you have heard from the scene setting segment of our event, I'd like for you to reflect from your own experiences on what you have done to catalyze change, empowering leadership and breaking barriers. And do this by reflecting on three questions. The first one is what concrete actions and policies can be put in place to scale up recruitment, retention, and advancement of women's pivotal role in climate action and the energy transition. The second is what initiatives and strategies can be implemented to foster women's leadership in climate and sustainable energy workforce, ensuring that their voices are heard at decision-making levels. And the final one, which I think is really important, is how we can dismantle gender stereotypes, building on what we've heard from the studies, and overcome existing barriers to encourage women to pursue careers in the climate and sustainable energy sector. And what benefits does diversity bring to drive sustainability and innovation? So a lot of questions, you don't have to answer all of them. You can answer one, you can summarize them, one or two. And I'm also going to put Kande Mkela, Dr. Kande Mkela from Sierra Leone on the hotspot, because I will be also asking for you to give your reflections as well. Thank you so much for joining our session. So let me start with perspectives from government. Brynhilde Surason, specialist from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Iceland. Please, could you share your thoughts with us?
Yes, thank you, Sheila. I would like to start by saying that I'm really grateful to be here today, addressing such an important topic, such an important event. Coming from Iceland, we have for a long time in our development policy, the empowerment of women and gender equality has been like a guiding light in our policy for many years, and like a foundational, this part of it's like a foundational, how do I say it, foundational part, I guess. And we really, 80% of our development finance goes towards projects that in some way enhance gender equality, empowerment of women, and 20% of these 80% goes towards projects that have gender equality as a principal aim. And we have been, like from the start, supported Sea for All, and we were also one of the first signatories for the first Gender Energy Compact. So this really reflects where we stand at home, where gender equality has come a long way. And I'm really happy to report that in our new development policy, which is currently under public consultation, this will continue to be a guiding light that is proposed in the new policy. So Iceland really acknowledges that a fundamental part of addressing the climate change challenge and transitioning towards sustainable development is to provide women a bigger role in the energy transition. And this transition has to be just and inclusive. So we have to address energy poverty, but women are at the end of the line. They are the most vulnerable group when it comes to energy poverty. But it's not enough just to provide them access to energy. We have to provide them access to clean energy, and this will enhance their security, their health, and this will also empower them economically. And that is really crucial because research really shows that if you provide women, make them a part of a workforce within a company, for instance in the renewable sector, and better yet, provide them with leadership positions, good things happen. And I can provide you with an example from Iceland. Reykjavik Energy Company, Reykjavik Energy Utility Company, which is one of the biggest energy company in Iceland and is the main provider of energy in Reykjavik. About 40 to 50% of its managing position are filled up by women. And I think it was a few years ago that the CEO of the company even said this occurred after women were, a bigger part of the board of directors and leadership position across the company. Then profits went up. So I would say this is pretty much a no-brainer. This is a clear example. We are very advanced in the renewable energy sector, and this is just a clear example how beneficial women can be within this sector. And I just want to also, because Sheila meant how to dismantle gender stereotypes and overcome existing barriers, I think it's really important, and Christine also mentioned it before in her lecture, that attention must be paid to educating young girls and boys, because there are those social norms in place where the young generation and the older generation is thinking that women can't participate in these male-dominated fields and subjects. There has to be a shift of perspective here, and we need to encourage young girls and women that have interest in those male-dominated subjects to pursue those subjects and give them more access to role models. I think that would make a lot of a difference. And just altering their view, and better yet, just prevent this view from happening altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brynhilde. And indeed, we do acknowledge the role that Iceland played at the high-level dialogue on energy, where your minister was in the forefront of the launch of the Gender and Energy Compact that now boasts 85 signatories. 10 or Katrina, is it 11 now, are our governments and our member states. But I also recall, Dr. Kande, that the president of Iceland, so the highest level of decision-making from your country, was very much together with us when we were working towards the SDG 7 in the earlier years. So really embracing a leaving no one behind agenda. And he stayed for 2-hour meetings, which is remarkable when you think of how busy most presidents are. So now I'd like to move to Mr. Jean-François Garny, Head of Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat, to give your reflections.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and thank you very much for the organizer for allowing me to I feel very proud as a man to be standing on this with such, a talented group of powerful women who actually are the embodiment of why this is important. And I'll echo what Christine said in terms of it's great to see some men in the room. I'll say I would have wished there would be more men in the room. Because if there's one message that I think we need to get out of here is, gender equality is not a women's issue. It is a societal issue. If we know of one thing, in order to achieve the energy transition, we'll need all the skills that we can get. And shutting down half of that skill set is not a good idea if we are to succeed. And this is also why I'm proud to be here as the head of the SAM Secretariat, because at the SAM, we've been looking at these socio-economic issues of the transition from the get-go. We've been around for about 15 years, and look at issues such as the opportunities for jobs, such as the skills needed, but also the inclusivity, making sure that women, youth, marginalized people, all are part of the solution set that we look into. And so it's very, very important for us to be able to be here, to be partnering with GWNet, with SE4All, with all the partners in terms of bringing our forces together to share the lessons learned, but also to send the message out. And so you're asking, what can we do concretely in terms of making this? I think I'll kind of focus on two areas where the SAM is trying to bring its value forward. One, and it's been said by many people, in terms of measuring what the issue is. And so we have a work stream that looks at the different data methodologies, the different ways to look at the issue, to be able to gather as much information in terms of what are the right policy measures. And in there, what we look at, for example, is not just the raw data in terms of how many women are in which fields, but also some of the underlying rules, as well as some of the policies that have been there, and which of them have been successful. And this gets back to me to the second part of what needs to be done, which is throwing the messages out there, making that information known. And there are two sides to that asset. One, sharing amongst policymakers the best practices, but also challenging each other. And this is where we launched a campaign that is called Equal by 30, where we challenge the world to actually move for equal pay, equal opportunity, and equal employment in all the energy field. We're lucky to have 200 signatories to that call for action right now. Many of them here, SE4All, GWNet, Irina is hoping to join us soon. But we also had pledges from G7 governments in 2019, and not only are the signatories pledging to doing things, they're actually reporting on their progress, and they are self-assessing each other to be able to demonstrate what works, what doesn't work. And so it is that sharing aspect that is also very useful. And then the third part is the inspiration. And I think we heard, patriarchal, society models and so forth. I think we can't throw enough out there the importance for women to have their place in the workforce. There's a lot of work for men to be done in terms of making sure that space is there. But also I was very interested to see our UNFCCC colleagues' point about women also need to feel empowered and to want to go after that. And I think I'm very, very happy to see in the back there a very, maybe young future leader. And I think it starts at a very, very young age. And hopefully we can continue to have examples of women like this. In the Equal by 30, we have an ambassadors program where we bring together, senior representatives in the energy sector who can talk about their struggles, but also the solutions they've been able to hopefully empower others to do the same. So very glad to be on the panel here today.
Thank you very much, Jean-François. Shall we clap for the remarks? Thank you. So now we go to Maria Flauder, Board CEO and Sustainability Chair of Lean in Equity and Sustainability. Your reflections are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and thank you for having us here today. I represent Lean in Equity and Sustainability. We are a 100% volunteer-run organization. Our core values is SDGs number 5, 7, and 13. And our goal is to empower women in the energy sector, both traditional and renewable energy sector, but also in male-dominated sectors such as heavy industries. So what do is that we meet women where they are at. at their careers. So even if they are in the early stage or in the mid-career or in the late career, we are talking a lot about youth, but women in their 40s, in their 50s, they still have another 20 years of career in front of them. And we all face the same challenges, different by where we are in our careers, but still the challenges that we talked about are still there. So we provide, we're under the leanin.org umbrella, which is Sheryl Sandberg philanthropic organization. It's a wide umbrella that allows women's networks to be formed. It is free to all, and we have a lot of tools that we use, free tools from Lean-In. So what we do is, first we help women where they're at. So we empower them to navigate the biases and amplify their strengths at all stages in their careers. And second, we're helping and providing corporate organizations with those tools to ensure equal opportunities, making women feel valued and respected. So we're actually going on the ground and working with both women and corporates to get what all these statistics that we said, to get the higher and where we want to be, the 50%. So I will highlight 4 flagship programs that we have, and they're in the leanin.org website and available to all individuals and companies. We have first the Lean-In Circles, which is a program that is fully explained there with webinars and with materials that are freely downloadable, where allows women to create circles, safe spaces, on their own interests, so they can all meet and share experiences, opportunities. But also the same to be created within companies. So the same, we can create a women's network circle within the company. Second program is the 50 Ways to Fight Bias. It's again a program that can be implemented in the corporate organizations, which is targeted for leaderships and all employees. And the program illuminates and challenges the bias women face in the workplace. And it has interactive activities, scenarios, strategies, and training materials that we can implement directly within the company, so people will be aware that there is an issue in there and how to overcome it. Then we have another great program, which is called Allyship at Work and at Home. So it is again a training program with all the materials that helps us identify and amplify allyship at work. Obviously, the men are our best allies, and without men we cannot progress. I mean, this is the simple facts. So we need men to be with us on this, and we have to work together if we want to reach 50% or as best as we can. So these programs is actually implemented in the organization, so we can find the allies, so how men can be allies at work, because, okay, so we talk about women empowerment, but men, they don't know what actions they have to take. So we actually have to coach them, and we all have to be on the same understanding with the leadership, of course, because nothing can be progressed if the leadership is not in support. And we have also a program called Allyship at Home. So it's actually for dads and for men who want to support their wives or their daughters of how they can be their best allies and help them progress. And last but very important is what we touched earlier about early education. So we have a program called Lean-In Girls, which is targeted for girls between 11 and 15 years old. And it is to empower girls in schools. It is a curriculum, and it is also can be taken by anyone to talk to their daughters or to go into their local school, and to encourage girls to see themselves as leaders, challenging society's limiting challenges. So that's already available tools that can be accessed by anyone. And specifically what we do on the ground is exactly what we heard from Christine and with Stella. We target networking. So we create safe spaces for women to meet, exchange their challenges and solutions and how we can progress together, share the challenges so we can all know that there's more of us in the same situation. Advocating, so we use speaking in conferences, participating in events, and also leading and organizing seminars, amplifying our speech in social media. mentoring, participating in mentoring programs and mentoring either one-to-one or participating in group mentorship programs. And of course, the biggest and most important fact is the partnership and collaborations. So we're very honored to be partnering with GWNet, with Energia, SE4All, and UNIDO, and make a bigger impact together. We are also part of the Gender and Energy Compact, and we're very proud of that. And we do work with also academia, universities, also with UN Women. We are active in Sub-Saharan Africa, UK, France, and now UAE. So I would be happy to meet with you there in the COP28, wherever it is there, and see how we can collaborate together. And is my time up? Yes. Yeah, thank you, yeah.
Thank you. No, that was very, very rich. Thank you. So we're moving from evidence and commitments to real tools and actual work on the ground. Thank you. So now I'd like to invite Ute Collier, Acting Director of Knowledge Policy and Finance Center at IRENA, to give your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, the organizers, for inviting me here. And thank you, Christine, for already highlighting our work. I mean, as many of you know, IRENA has been working on the gender aspects for quite a few years. We've seen some of the studies we produced on women in solar, wind, etc. Just quick update, our latest job report was actually out just a few weeks ago. We're now on 13.7 million renewable energy jobs, so it's gone up another Huh? Yeah. But, you know, every year we see an increase, which is great, but I don't think we see that increase in the gender perspectives, percentages. So obviously, you know, as you saw, solar looks pretty good compared to oil and gas with 40%, but the reality is still that a lot of those roles are in administration. Nothing wrong with administration. Of course, these are important jobs, but you know, if we look at the STEM jobs and the management jobs, they're still very low percentages. And I saw an interesting figure. I think it was in our latest report in one of the case studies. In the US, which seems to be facing a big issue with retiring electricians, and of course electricians are incredibly important in the transition, only 2% of electricians are female. And I was suddenly thinking, well, when did I last see a female electrician? Actually, I know when, and that was when I went to Zimbabwe. I was working for Practical Action. We went to a field project, a mini grid, where part of that project was specifically to give women an opportunity to train as electricians. And I still remember that the young lady, she was so enthusiastic about the job. It was fantastic. And it's those kind of role models we're still lacking. I mean, we've got a long list of things that need to be done, of course, in our reports, but I just want to pick a few things. The first one, I want to pick that political leadership point, and it just every time, so once a year we have an assembly, our 167 member states come, and many of you, I know, have been there as well, and there's always some ministers, and then there is this family photo of the ministers and the DG, Director General, and all the important people, and you know, you really have to search for the women still. So, well, that's, you know, we can all raise awareness of the importance of women, but we also need the political leaders to show that women can be energy ministers. I know there are often portfolios which include economics, so why not? Teresa Ribera, of course, is great. I don't know with the change in Spanish government whether she'll still be in that position next week. We were talking about that yesterday. But excellent, right. And I think there's one in the UK, but there are not so many. And of course, in Africa, I think that there are a few and some great leaders, but we need more of them. And I just want to continue with the sort of public sector, because I've spent a lot of my career in the public sector, and I've seen some very good examples of how you promote female leadership, and that includes a whole range of things of, you know, the mentorship programs, within like big civil service organizations of flexible working. My God, it's so obvious. And in a way, the pandemic sort of helped with that, but got a fly around my head. I hope the fly agrees. But there's still so many organizations. Well, there's many organizations which are going back on it now, and it is so difficult. I mean, I haven't got kids. I've chosen not to have kids for various reasons. And for me, it's easy. But, you know, it's impossible, isn't it, for parents, men and women, sometimes to have these really busy jobs, especially like our international jobs where we have to travel a lot. It's really not easy to do when you don't have flexibility in working. We're kind of expected, yeah, we're away traveling, then we've got to be back on Monday morning, possibly still working at the weekend. And the higher you go, the worse it gets, you know, and it just doesn't seem being recognized that we need a life for our own well-being and for our families. So there are some organizations which have made great strides on it, but I think a lot of organizations still have to do a lot more work. And I don't want to talk too long, so let me just pick out that mentorship point. I think that's really important because, Dina, I think your organization has done a great job. There are some others, women in hydrogen I've come across, they're brilliant, and lots of young women in that. I've worked with the wiser people in the UAE as well, and I think it's also very empowering for us as sort of senior people in the sector to mentor young women, and I've learned a lot as well. Unfortunately, not so great things in terms of what's still going on in the sector, which is kind of shocking. But I think these are really important, and all our, you know, we should make time for these kind of programs. And of course, you know, if we are in a position to recruit people, we need to make sure that we have women on the short list. I mean, it's got to be a fair process in the end. And I have to admit, we still struggle to get some really well-qualified women in some of the positions. Maybe it's sometimes a location factor for us in Abu Dhabi, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard. I think it's almost always hard to do a 50-50 shortlist, as much as we try. But let's call out our colleagues as well, who sometimes forget that we ought to, you know, at least try and shortlist some women, that we have to stop doing these manels. And I know it's very hard for us sometimes to find women to put on panels, and then someone drops out and that's it. And of course, here it's the other way around. But then we've got like years and years of making up to do. So there's a lot we can do, and I think it's all our responsibility to play part of it.
Thank you very much, Ute. And like you said, I think the flexibility goes both ways. I was really surprised working in the Netherlands that my husband had 2 days off when we had our daughter, the day to take me to the hospital and the day to pick me up from the, from the hospital. So it goes both ways. But now I'd like to invite remarks from Julia Marconi, a Senior Program Officer, Energy Security from OSCE. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I hope you can all hear me, and thanks also to UNIDO for giving us the possibility to organize this event. As you said, I come from the OSCE. The OSCE is the world's largest regional security organization. So I would like to add to what has been said already that, of course, gender equality is a sustainability issue, is a human rights issue, but it's also a security issue, including when it comes to the energy security topics. We at the OSCE really looks at gender equality in the energy sector as a key factor contributing to peace, stability, and security. And for that reason, precisely 2 years ago, we launched our first pilot project on advancing women participation in the energy sector in Central Asia, which is a region that has great untapped renewable energy potential as a catalyst for energy security. So this is, I think, a very important point that we should not forget. Second, you asked us to talk about potential solution. I think in these rooms, we all know and we are all aware that there is a gender gap. And I think this is also well acknowledged by now, also in the countries where we operate. But still, I think there is a big gap in terms of the recognition of why we should actually engage women and put them at the forefront of the energy transition. And this requires us all to step up our efforts, also outside of these rooms. We have conducted many studies, we have so many data, but then when it comes to actually implement all the recommendations, then that is where the challenge actually still is. And we at the OSC started this project and are using a 360-degree approach to really work with all key stakeholders on the ground to implement this work. We worked with many partners that are here, GWNet, IRENA, and many more, and we really hope to step up our efforts on the ground. There is really appetite, I think, for change. Countries have set their goals, but they struggle to know how to implement them. So this is one point. Second point, we know that gender equality is a common reality across different countries, but I'm not 100% sure that solutions are always the same. So we need to really go country by country and look at the barriers there and then create context-specific tailored solutions. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to see the same, for example, level of improvement that maybe we're seeing in Europe in developing countries. So this is also very important. This is something that we're also been working on a lot. And my third point, I think oftentimes, I mean, you mentioned that it's very important to work with women, to organize mentorship program, and those, of course, work very well for women that are already working in the energy sector. We also organized a mentoring program together with GWNet, and that has been a very successful one. But of course, we need to work with youth, with young women. The gender imbalances that we see today really comes from male-dominated educational pathways and the gender stereotypes, and we talk about that. And sometimes when I go to the countries where we are implementing our projects and we talk to students, even those students that are already studying technical subjects, they struggle because they don't have the support that they would like to receive from their parents or from the families, or not even from the professors sometimes. We see a lot of discrimination happening, and we really need to make sure that we work with all different stakeholders to address this and really open their mind and show that there are many career opportunities, first of all, that all women, and both women and men, can actually thrive in the energy sector. So this is also important. And with this in mind, for example, at the OSC, we created a manual on how to initiate a career in the energy sector that we're going to disseminate across our beneficiary countries in Central Asia, working together not only with universities, but also with high school. We need to really go backward, and this is also an important point. And we also recently launched a scholarship program supporting women from Afghanistan and Central Asia to undertake also master programs in renewable energy. And this also now brings me to another point. There are not enough programs on renewable energy, and when there are, they also struggle to attract girls. So this is also an important point that I think we need to address. These are just, I think, some of the examples, just a fraction of what can be done, really. So I'm really happy to be here and engage in the discussion with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ilya. Now, the co-organizers were determined to make sure that at least at this session we do have interaction and engagement with the audience, because we haven't been having that in the different sessions that we have been attending. So I'm now going to open up to the floor and to the audience for your contributions and your questions also to the speakers. Please be concise, and when you do stand up to make a contribution, please first say your name, identify yourself by saying your name and your organization affiliation. Now, I had said that I'm going to put Dr. Kandem Keller on the spot, both in your capacity as representing your a developing country, Sierra Leone, both on the energy and on the climate side, but also as a global champion for, first for SDG 7, but very much for other SDGs, including SDG 5 and SDG 17. Dr. Kandlik, your thoughts?
Thank you very much. Thank you to Irene, Diana, Raquel, Christine, and you for keeping this agenda alive for over a decade. I remember the early days I had to learn from you as well. But thanks for keeping it up, and I see that Clean Energy Ministerial is still pushing the agenda. So 2 things I will say. 1, political will. We need more women in politics. In my country, I joined Parliament 5 years ago. And one of the things I started pushing immediately was a quota for women. But I had started since 2013 with Sherry Blair. And guess what? We got the legislation, not because of me, but perhaps stimulated by me. But the government now passed a 30% quota for women in Parliament and all public positions. And guess what? From women, 18% of women share in Parliament, it's now over 40%. Yeah, because the 30% just boosted it. So sometimes you need affirmative action, reverse discrimination to make this happen, along some of the positions that Christine showed. If we don't become that proactive, it will not happen. We men are very comfortable with what we have, our dominance. Second point is something that I know Iceland is addressing in my country, fish drying. I say that because I ran here from an agricultural value chain session about energy interventions. For us in the poorer African countries, women's role in energy is a survival and existential issue. Yeah, the technologies they need, I just said in the other session, for some commodities, 60 to 80% of the processing after the farm is done by women. Most of those interventions require energy solutions, heat solutions. So they use firewood and charcoal. So for poorer countries, yes, we want to be in the management, we want to be the electricians, but for me, it's bigger than that. It's about economic empowerment. It's about the economy moving forward. If women are responsible for that much of the labor force in your main economy, which is agrarian, then you better make sure the technologies they need, the energy technologies they need are available. Otherwise, your economy slows down, and I see it in mine. So, but we need data. We need the evidence. When we say there's research, but the rest of the men don't want to agree. But I see it in my village, I see it in the community, and it's the women in the markets. So my last comment is that we need the data, we need support, and I hope I can get Sheila to come in. I'm inviting you to my country. Let's see how we establish that baseline. And yes, I'm a member of WISER as well. Every year I go to WISER in Abu Dhabi and we make the case. But a lot of those discussions are always biased to the OECD, the more advanced countries, the management positions. I'm talking now about almost, by the time you add India, Bangladesh, Sierra Leone, Indonesia, you're talking about almost 1 billion women that need energy solutions for survival and for the economic viability of their economies. So let's do more.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Maggie Matinga, affiliated to Energia, and I'm from Malawi. And I'll kind of pick up from what Kande, where he stopped. In the energy sector, we keep talking about the fact that the more women we get into the sector, the more competitive it is. And this is largely true. But so far, the data we have is from developed countries. And this makes it difficult for us as gender experts to make the case in our countries. So we need that data. And the other reality is, whilst in the US and in Europe, you have a skills demand, in Africa, we have a jobs gap. So it's very difficult for us to go and say, you really need to employ women and invest in their skills so that they can work in your company, when the company can easily employ young men that are cheaper and don't have to invest the extra. So one of the things that really need to happen, doesn't look like an agenda issue, it is a gender issue, is to actually start shifting value chains to Africa. If you look at the biggest growth in energy access in Africa, it's solar. But where is that solar produced? It's not produced in Malawi. The solar panels, the solar lanterns are not produced in Malawi. They're not produced in Sierra Leone. So therefore, the jobs for women to even enter are not there. They're not adequately there. So that needs to change. The other thing is that every time I come to these conferences, there's a lot of, and even look at development projects, a lot of developing partners pushing for the gender issue, and we do appreciate. But I think there needs to be institutionalization within these institutions themselves of gender. We want to see brown and black women heading international development agencies and making those changes. Heading those and being part of those mentorship programs so that they can understand how to mentor a black and a brown woman coming into the sector. And I say this as a black engineer that came into the sector when it was actually very, very white, thankfully changing now, and very, very male. And I couldn't get a mentor. There was no connection there to mentor me. And in terms of also publishing what we preach and being accountable, we are very content with the fact that in renewable energy, there are more women than in fossil. Big deal. They are mostly agents selling solar, and many without any security, no job security, very much, people talk about, we give them commission, and some of those commission don't even account for a living wage, they don't account for transport. So when we publish those 30% job, those 32% job, what I would like to see in the next publication is where are those jobs, and who's taking those jobs, what is the quality of those jobs? I think that will really begin to unpack the issues rather than lump a lot of issues in one, and we become content with what we see, which is not very much. And really to move away from this capitalistic approach where women, yes, they're coming into the sector, but they're also coming only when they are cheap, and then we can send them out. So this is just a call for action to make our ambitions much higher, much more nuanced, and be accountable ourselves before we ask for accountability from the village men and the village women where our interventions are. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila. Hi, everyone. My name is Akil Kalender. I'm the youth specialist at SC for All. I wanted to talk about the structural shift that is needed. So I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, small island state in the Caribbean. In my previous role before SC for All, I worked at the World Bank. We did a lot of energy projects in my region, including St. Lucia, Jamaica, Brazil. And oftentimes, we would try to create pathways for women to get involved in the energy sector through providing education and then making sure that there are opportunities for traineeships, internships, and then job opportunities off the back of that. And what we found was there was a two-sided barrier where on one side, the supervisors, who were most often men in these companies that we would try to place the women into, they were a big barrier. They didn't believe that the woman could do these more technical jobs, even though they had jobs in the energy sector, so they were administrative. And then that also led to the women who were getting these jobs with the lack of role models there, not believing that they were adequate or suitable for these roles. And so these are young women who are having this ideology placed into their heads, and then either they leave the sector or they just stay in an administrative role for the rest of their careers. And personally, I don't have that mindset because I was lucky enough to have, at every stage of my development, have strong female leaders as my mentors, and that has shifted my ideology. But how do we ensure that there are more young men who can have access to female mentors? How can we ensure that we shift at a very early stage through the education system the role that young women see themselves playing in the energy sector, and the role that young men see women playing in the energy sector, and then have that over time, organic change to ensure that we can achieve gender parity. And I think that's a question that I want to pose to the panelists in your roles that you have on a day-to-day basis, and the access that you might have to policy, to education. Is there an opportunity that you see where this kind of change can be implemented at the boys and girls early education stage, and even for young professionals who I believe can still have their mindsets changed about issues like this? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll try to be very brief and concise. Hello, everyone. My name is Shukur Muradov. I'm from Turkmenistan, Central Asia. I'm many things. I'm a UNODC consultant, focal point of Regional Youth Network in Central Asia, National Gender Youth Activist for Young Women, and alumnus of OSCE Perspectives 23rd Academy. So I've been curious about the role of education and skills development in preparing the next generation of women for careers in the sustainable energy sector. And I'm very happy to have heard a lot of successful examples, as for example, in Lean in Equity and Sustainability entity about curriculum, right, women community meeting initiative. And my question would be more on how can we enhance educational opportunities and training programs to empower young women with the skills needed for these roles, with context-specific solution, as Ms. Julia Mancani mentioned. As for example, in my region, it's true that there are few or not at all renewables programs in universities, in academia, and there is for sure stigmatization as well, that it is not an area for women. So I'm not asking for concrete solutions, but your ideas based on this context. And for sure, lastly, considering my role as a youth activist, what advice would you give to young activists like us looking to create meaningful change in the sustainability energy sector, particularly in the context of gender equality? Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we've had a lot of thought-provoking interventions, constructive, like I said, provocative. I'd like to open up to all our speakers, so that's also the welcome, the opening, the keynote address, but also those on the panel, if you would like to respond to the interventions and the questions that were made. Is there anyone who would like to start? Thank you.
I guess the ladies first doesn't work on the panel where there's only one man, so it's great to change the dynamics of these things. Maybe I'll try to quickly, touch at a very high level, because very, very good questions, very, very good points. But I'll go from a discussion we had last July when we had the Clean Energy Ministerial in Goa, and we were organizing a very high-level panel with very, very powerful women from industry, from international organizations, from governments. DDG Singh was on our panel, and the value there was to share the experience, but also to touch upon what are some of the key things that can be changed and can be done. And there were kind of two areas that stuck with me in there, and we talked about them here. One is the organizational bias. And the question there, and I think we've talked a little bit also, is how do you change an industrial or a company or organization's culture? And Christina mentioned, yes, women access to jobs is human right, but that's not the only reason to do it. There is actually economic value to do this, and that's how we get the change, is to provide the value added of that aspects. And on the question about jobs, well, if companies have to report on the women, and if the investors know that gender equity basically automatically means better performance, then you attract the investments and you create this internal need to be able to transform that organizational structure to be able to change some things. Everybody doesn't start at the same level, but the idea is to show you don't do this just as a human rights aspect, you do this because it makes business sense, and that's how you basically address the two issues. The other aspect that was also very interesting, we touched upon it here as well, is the family bias. It's the, at what age do you need to start changing that? And there I address a little bit the mentorship aspect, because it's true that ideally, if you can identify yourself truly to a mentor, it is a very powerful tool to have. But because we don't have that everywhere, are there other role models that we can see? And then I'm, again, sending the message out here to the men in this room. We're either part of the solution or we're part of the problem. And one of the key things that was very interesting for me from that panel is a lot of the people on the panel said, even in their families, unconscious biases of guiding women towards more traditional roles and careers was something that they somehow had to fight, And so here's, being part of the solution doesn't mean doing a lot. It was great. You were talking about how you were inspired by women in your world. You being the activist. One of my biggest pride, my daughter is in aerospace engineering in university right now. And it's not that she followed daddy's footsteps that I'm proud of. It's the fact that in high school, she was trying to recruit other girls to go into STEM fields, which makes me say, probably I think something that wasn't too bad as a father to tell her that this was an entitlement. This was something that she could do, that she was trying to convince others to do the same. So it's those small positive biases that can also make a change. And I'll say again, hi to the very young minds that we have with us today. And hopefully this discussion can actually stir some future action. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean-François. Anyone else who would like to respond to the questions? Yes.
Yeah, just about education. I suddenly remembered, I'm now that old, I don't know how that happened, but when I went to school in Germany, us girls had to do needlework and the boys did metalwork. I mean, honestly, I hope this doesn't happen anymore nowadays. Luckily, I was an only child, and I guess my dad would have liked to have a boy, but because he didn't, you know, I ended up also playing with cars and with railways and whatever. So I think the parent thing is definitely important to make sure. And even if you're a little girl, of course, why not like pink? Nothing wrong with pink, I like pink. But make sure that pink, purple, whatever, you know, but let's make sure the kids also have access to other ideas. And I think teachers, absolutely crucial that, I mean, hopefully nowadays, a lot of the old fossils are out of schools, but I think it's very important that teachers have training about the unconscious bias as well. And, you know, both male and female teachers, that they encourage the girls and the boys to think about other roles. You know, it's not as if boys have to become engineers if they don't want to either.
Thank you. Just one, did you want to say something? Okay, so just one, the last one, thank you.
I hope, yeah, just very quickly, actually, because actually what you mentioned actually still happens. So there are some countries where there are still this division in school. And to address that, of course, it's very important to work with professors, but sometimes you have countries where professors were not even entitled to have their own initiatives. So you need to work with government to make sure that they include women's empowerment and gender equality in their own curricula in schools and in universities. Otherwise, change will not happen. And also maybe I think we through our work, we really found that what works is also organizing women's engagement events, roundtables, take young students to see what it actually means to work in the energy sector, because so they can also overcome their all misconceptions sometimes about what it actually takes to work in the energy industry, and then maybe even engage students, both male and female students, in projects to let them have some lead in this and their own initiatives to empower each other, actually. Yes, so that's my last message.
Thank you. Yes.
On the activists part, I think what we need is activists. We need disruption, because without disruption, we'll still keep doing this conversation in 10 years from now. So we need young people and people that are activists and they're passionate about this to create disruption, to create noise, to create this thing that can make us all change, basically. So, yeah.
Thank you. So, and just from my part, I appreciate the comments about diversity, and magic happens at intersectionality. So I think it's really looking beyond maybe just the binary male and female, but also looking much more deeper to how it intersects with race, with disabilities, with others is also equally important. I also appreciate the comments about when we're talking about mentorship, it's across the whole value chain. It's at the vocational level, it's at the village level, and it's also very much at the management and level as well. So, but we've come to the end of the session, and I think as the organizers, we also wanted to be the one event that ends on time and respect our respect the time that we need to go and stand in the line and queue up for lunch. So I'd like to wrap up now, and on behalf of the organizers, I'd like to express my gratitude to all our speakers, but also to you, the audience, for your contributions and just for your participation, active participation and attention to this very important issue. We have heard that the evidence is there. I think we can't deny that the evidence is there. The business case has been made, but we've also gone further and seen that there are resources, there are tools, and there's even commitment there's also commitment as well. So I think what remains now is really just intentional action to move forward on this issue. Starting from, is she still there? Starting from our youngest members all the way, members all the way to our oldest. To really foster a truly equitable, diverse, and participative workforce in a just and inclusive energy transition, and also in our attempts to meet the climate actions. So thank you so much for joining the conversation, and wishing you all a very constructive next few hours when we close our event. I'm hoping that we'll hear some of this feedback. Rana is here from UNIDO, so in the wrap-up, I'm hoping that we hear some of the feedback that is coming from our gender tracks in the final remarks that will be made at the session. So putting pressure on our UNIDO callers. Thank you.